Our story begins inside the mind of a man riding a horse, accompanied by an escort. All he can think is, from now on, I want to live just for myself. I don't want to attend any kind of school, whether it's college, high school, university, or academy. He had made that promise to himself a long time ago. As they approached their destination, his escort pointed out the place. And we see the best magic academy of their empire, Onii-Chan. His escort said he's happy because he thought he'd just become a useless knight. But now he's overjoyed to be escorting our protagonist to Onii-Chan where he'll study. It feels like just yesterday he was a little boy. Kids, they grow up so fast. In the end, our protagonist couldn't avoid schools. Let's flash back to his previous college. On the very day he graduated, his friend was happy for him because he was now free from professors who treated him like a slave. He was abused during his grad school life, all his time was consumed, even his weekends, and he always worked overtime at the office. They only ate gimbap. He was even told he was good and that the task suited him, why not try them again? No thanks, he replied. See that truck?
Oh no!
You know what's coming. He thought to himself, he did his best and tried to understand the people in his life, but now he doesn't want to get close to anything related to schools. It's time to live for himself. Then suddenly, a fast-moving truck lost its brakes. He shouted at our protagonist to move, but it was too late. And bang, a classic isekai intro. What a waste, his diploma became a worthless piece of paper. But he was reincarnated with all his memories, and his strong feelings about schools. As a child in a wealthy noble family. He is now Lee Han Wardinas, the third child of the Wardinas family. And here's the kicker, he was born into the leading mage family of the empire. Isn't that something? Rich, powerful, and handsome. He thinks this is fate's reward for the hardships he endured in grad school. He's going to have an easy life now. But he was wrong to think that. First of all, according to the family's first rule, only the eldest child inherits all the wealth. And the other kids get nothing. So they have to find their own way to survive and secure their future. Fortunately, they're allowed to study whatever they want. And Lee first studied swordsmanship. Arlalong, his knight, couldn't believe Lee chose to learn swordsmanship. Do you plan to become a swordsman someday? Arlalong asked. Lee replied that wasn't his plan. He just learned the sword because the skill might be useful someday. But he still really plans to become a mage because it seems like the safest career path for him. Arlalong was impressed by Lee's maturity, saying most noble children are too ambitious about their dreams and chosen careers. But Lee is different and thinks maturely even at a young age. Lee couldn't say that he had already graduated in his past life, which is why he thinks practically. There are 3 groups in their society that can rise in ranks and become powerful mages at any time: the Knights, Adventurer Guild, and Imperial Family. And is the Empire's best magic academy, Onii-Chan is the perfect school to groom them. Lee told himself he'd only endure a few years staying there. Even the patriarch himself complimented him, saying, I expect great things from you. Before they parted ways, Lee thanked Arlalong for everything, even though he tried to prevent Lee from studying magic when he was young because it was dangerous. Servants and horses aren't allowed beyond their current position. But what's this? Special treatment. The carriages of the Duke's daughter and the prince have arrived. Lee noticed that there were only a few nobles entering the carriage. But why so many guards? All this for just a few nobles? Overkill. At Onii-Chan, students should enter individually. Then he noticed another noble entering with him, who seemed very nervous. The noble said he couldn't sleep because he couldn't live without his servants. His servants were like his hands and feet, so now that he's alone, he feels like he's lost limbs. And why are slaves allowed to study inside? Just to say the school wants everyone to be equal? He said he'd complain about it to the higher-ups. Lee replied, go ahead, do your best. But he's really curious about what would happen if he did. And boom, suddenly a mage appeared and seemed to cast a spell on him. He became like a broken record, repeatedly saying to himself, I'll calm down, I'll calm down. Lee was shocked. And he realized they really do use spells on the nobles here. He wondered if the rumors were true that there were monsters inside the academy, and when a student dies, they bury them in the mountain behind the school. Then a voice spoke, saying people claim everything in Einrogard is just an illusion. "Idiots," said the voice as the school's large door opened. Lee and everyone there felt an immense pressure of power and couldn't speak or move. "Is this their headmaster?" Lee wondered. The voice spoke again, saying they all knew they should enter without bringing anything. But it's okay if they didn't follow the rule because he'll dispose of their belongings himself. So he threw away the carriages and the horses, including the clothes and the servants inside. He called them fools. Why aren't they entering? So they entered, and this is what the speaker looked like. A skull made of a magic projection. The door closed, and this was their first day at Einrogard. As the students walked inside, someone recognized our protagonist, saying, "You're Lee-han, right? From the Wardina's family. That's you, right?" "I'm Yoner Maken." He said he's from the Making family, another mage family like the Wardinas. "Nice to meet you, Yoner," Lee replied. "What's up?" He said the prince wanted to see him. Lee thought, huh? The prince? What does he want? And the blondie in green was happily waving at him. Well, as they say, Einrogard is a place for talent and socializing. And intense networking is already happening inside the school on the first day. Lee thought, why is he being called by the prince when their emperor has over 100 children? If he's not the emperor's firstborn, then their situations are similar. But actually, his situation is even worse because they don't support their career choices and don't give anything. And besides, his royal status is wasted because he's just mixed in with other ordinary nobles. Yoner Maken invited him to join them. Lee saw that other students were laughing at the prince, who wasn't known or special. But he went along with it, better to have a friend than an enemy. Yoner was so happy when Lee agreed because he had been rejected by others earlier. Lee was shocked by what he heard, his eyes even widened. It seems he befriended the wrong group. Our blondie in green is Gainando, the 97th prince of the emperor. Many say he's actually the 101st prince, but he insists he's the 97th. He really doesn't want to be counted as over 100 no matter what. Are you listening, Lee-han? Gainando asked. He had been speaking for a while, but our protagonist is always deep in thought. Oh, sorry, what did you say? Lee replied. Isn't it great, answering a question with a question? The prince was annoyed by the one who rejected him earlier. How immature, Lee thought. Lee just said maybe he didn't know how noble he was. What does noble mean? The prince asked. Lee thought, not only is he immature, but he's also dumb. He said, noble means you have high status and are important. Gainando was flattered and said that description suited him. He saw the one who rejected him earlier now talking to Ardenheart, and he felt insulted. This is Ardenheart, the 44th princess of the imperial family. Lee thought, it's only right that people flock to the princess because she looks and behaves elegantly. Unlike the other one. Gainando said Lee should confront the one who rejected him later. Lee replied that nobles shouldn't bully. Gainando made an excuse, saying it's not bullying if it's just talking. Nobles don't do that, think about it, Lee told him. What should I do then? He asked. Lee replied, forgive him. But if you don't want to, then challenge him to a duel. Gainando was shocked by what he heard. He said, I don't need to take it that far, I'm a noble so I'll just forgive him. Good boy, Lee said. Yoner looked at them. Wow. Amazing. Yoner exclaimed. Even his own relatives couldn't tolerate Gainando's stubbornness. Lee asked Yoner why he had to look after Gainando. But Yoner couldn't answer because the mask appeared again and called them Iron Heads. A student shouted that he's the lich they saw outside the school earlier. The mask seemed angry. To become a great mage who overcomes death, one must first become an undead. Apparently, the school principal is a lich. I have a question, the lich said. Why do you think I call you Iron Heads? Ardenheart answered, because iron is the symbol of freshmen. You're right. 10 points for Gryffindor. Oh. Do our dormitories have a point system? Ardenheart asked. The lich replied, of course. Not. Just kidding. A mage should be able to discern a lie. Iron, this is the symbol of freshman. Because iron can be used in many different ways and is malleable. It's a fitting symbol for them all. One of them exclaimed, "Oh, that's why." Just kidding again. The mask laughed because someone believed him again. The truth is, they're called iron heads because their heads are empty. The students felt immense pressure again. None of them could raise their voice or object to the leech's trash talk. It's hard to move and act when surrounded by this level of magic power density. Then Lee could suddenly move his right arm. Did the principal adjust the intensity, or did his body get used to the magic power the principal was emitting? While the principal was still speaking, he noticed one student was somehow moving within his magic density. That doesn't seem normal. So he let the students enter the door on the left. When they entered, a feast was prepared in a large, beautiful, and shiny dining hall. "All right. Wow," one of them said, hoping it wasn't a joke. There was cheese, bread, and butter, battered chicken braised in wine, delicious bechamel, and oriental fish. Time to eat. Then,
It became Cocoa Crunch! No way!
their food disappeared. Ha ha ha, the principal laughed at them. They're so stupid, when will they pay attention? Lee thought, rumor has it, when someone becomes a lich, something is taken away from them. But it seems a lot was taken from their principal when he became a lich. The lich said their academy is the birthplace of mages. And the main driving force for raising them properly here is being eager. So he spit out many uniforms for them. And also food for them to take. The prince said he's going too far. The lich approached him and said that's the reaction he wanted from them. If they don't like the food, then they should learn magic and make their own food. If their clothes and wands get dirty, then they should use magic. That's the rule of their academy. The principal said that if they need something inside the academy, they need to learn to use their own magic to obtain it. Then a smarty pants said, maybe they could call outside to order things they need. The lich replied that it's not allowed, and first-year students are also not allowed to leave the school grounds or ask for things from their seniors. That's it, goodbye. Good luck, Ironheads, the lich said before suddenly disappearing. Lee thought, even in this new world, it seems their professors are still crazy. It's just like the eyes of their lab professor from his old school. Did you hear that, Lee-han? Gainando asked him. Our protagonist is deep in thought again, haha. Our principal is really harsh on us, Gainando remarked. But Lee still didn't hear him. They said they can't live with such low-quality food and clothes. Lee replied, but it seems their current principal is still better since the school provides free food, room, and uniforms. What? Gainando exclaimed. In Lee's mind, he explained that magic family nobles in their world are all about magic research and have no social life, so misinformation is common among them. And no one there really knows the Wardina's family well. Meanwhile, Gainando is still complaining about the clothes and food. Even their house servants don't have such low-quality clothes and food. How could Lee say it's okay? Visit us sometime, Gainando said. Lee replied. Okay. Einrogard admits students based solely on magic talents and potential, status isn't important to them. But to avoid conflicts and fights, the academy divided their dormitories into 4, based on status. The vainglorious Blue Dragon's Tower is for nobles with dragon's blood. This includes the royal family and high-ranking noble families like the Wardinas. The eternally burning Phoenix's Tower is for mages who have dedicated everything to the divine flame. This is where solemn groups, like religious orders, belong. The lightning-biting White Tiger's Tower is only for those who like to bite. Rar. Families of knights belong here. So, people here follow dual paths, they're both mages and knights. Last and also the least, the omniscient Black Turtle's Tower is for those with the most patience. Various people are here. All peasants, servants, slaves, clowns, homeless, merchants, and even low-ranking nobles. Of course, this dorm is the most oppressed and looked down upon. Because of humph, social status. There are always those kinds of people, you know what I mean. It's so annoying, right? They should be sent to another world. Haha. But of course, there are some nobles who don't look down on them. Like our protagonist, who sees them as potential business partners. So, he wants to befriend the people in this dorm. Lee thinks that real-life experience is the most effective way to excel in business, and business is the most effective way to make a lot of money. A rude student complained, asking if the academy really needs to accept these classless people. These are the arrogant freshman nobles of the academy. Lee heard this and thought, how dare you insult my future business partners? You're the real classless ones. Lee said, have you already forgotten that as soon as we entered the academy, we left everything we had outside? Why are you acting like that when we're all equal here? Boom, the arrogant ones were embarrassed in front of the other students. Other students said Lee is really good, as expected from a noble from the Wardina's family. In Lee's mind, great. His reputation is good at the moment, it's time to talk to his future partners. But when he approached them, they were scared of him. Rumors about the Wardina's family say it's dangerous to talk to them and that their patriarch is a dragon. Their bloodline comes from an ancient spirit. Lee wondered why they reacted that way to him. Do I look scary, Yoner? Lee asked. Yoner replied, not really. You actually look dignified, like a noble. Now, Lee will find out how infamous his family is. Suddenly, Gainando appeared, saying, why did you leave a prince behind? Sorry, Yoner replied. Lee went back to the conversation he had with Yoner that was interrupted by the leech's arrival. Yoner said the reason he tolerates the prince's stubbornness is because of his mother. Once upon a time, at a royal banquet, there was a very naughty young girl named Yoner. She accidentally spilled wine on the expensive dress of the royal empress. She thought she was doomed, and the nobility of the Macon family would end. But the empress was kind and told her it's okay and not to cry. Mistakes happen. The empress was kind, but more importantly, she was super rich. And she even gave Yoner a huge allowance in exchange for being friends with Gainando. Lee couldn't believe the story. And our business-minded protagonist thought that he also needs to be friends with Gainando. Great. They were amazed as they walked on the field because inside their academy, they have their own lake, forest, everything. Lee thought, it's really possible to be independent here as long as you're resourceful. The principal was right. Now, the noble students are looking for the way to their dorm. But the students suddenly stopped. And Lee was very shocked by what they saw. They saw the dorm of the Blue Dragon Tower. Wow. It's so small. What's this pathetic thing? A posh student remarked. The prince said even their house servants have bigger places than this. Lee wondered how they could all be accommodated in that building. Every minute they seemed to be more and more disappointed with the academy. As soon as Lee stepped inside, he suddenly floated in the void and was teleported. His companions also disappeared. What's happening? Then a voice spoke, welcome young mage, where would you like to go? In Lee's mind, that's how it is, it's a magic tower. Lee replied, where can I go? Our protagonist is really good. Why does he like to answer a question with a question? Ooh, you pick up quickly, the voice replied. The voice said he can only go to 2 places for now, his own room and the common room for freshmen. Lee asked the voice, does that mean I can go to other places later? The voice said, yes. He can go to other places as long as he knows their names. And there are also some places that require him to know certain things before he can go there. But not now, because the headmaster forbids it. Lee said he'd go to his room first. The voice took Lee to his room and said, welcome, young mage. Lee saw a book in his room about Einrogard. This is their only mandatory subject in the academy, the rest are electives. And you can choose the subjects you want after attending them all for a month. In the book, we find out that the name of their headmaster is Osu Gonadaltus. In Lee's mind, he thought the school isn't as strict as his previous grad school. That's good. And he's also content with the room he got. But the other students didn't like anything about their rooms. So picky. Lee understands the academy's rules well. He's also excited to find out what classes are available to them. Lee and Yoner met in the common room. I want to learn alchemy, Yoner said. Yoner has been thinking about it recently. His dream is to open his own workshop in the Imperial Palace. and supply various products there. That's a good idea, our business-minded protagonist remarked. Do you want to do this together? Yoner asked. Lee replied, Edward Elric said it's hard to run an alchemy business. I'll think about it. Kidding aside, it's really hard to enter the alchemy business in the Empire. Because the businessmen there play dirty. The market share competition is tight, so they sabotage each other, monopolize potions, ingredients. Lee said it would be better to go into a more stable business. Yoner asked Lee which subjects he's interested in. Me? Lee said. Lee is thinking that his strategy is to take subjects with little competition and where it's easy to get good grades. Lee's top goal is to become a civil servant where he'll be a manager inside the Imperial Palace. Studying isn't really important, he just needs easy grades and a good resume. Realistic and practical, right? But he doesn't want to tell that to Yoner, who looks so passionate about studying. He might get discouraged. While Lee was struggling to answer Yoner's question, Gainando suddenly arrived, panicking. He said it looks like a thief entered his room because there's nothing inside. The two just stared at him in disbelief. I was really robbed, I told you. Why are you reacting like that? The next day, they only have magic basics as one of their first lessons in their mandatory class. It seems their class schedules vary depending on which dormitory they come from. But wait. Why do all of Lee's classmates look like zombies? Yoner said they're all hungry and had trouble sleeping because their beds are so uncomfortable. Lee asked, is it really that bad? Because in Lee's previous life, where he worked as a grad student, they didn't even have coffee breaks. They worked continuously. And they only ate a granola bar for the whole day. His friend Sunbi said they'd eat something delicious after their whole shift. Lee said, if it's just ramen, you're in trouble. And there it was. Cup noodles with a side of kimbap. It seems what they have in his current academy is still better. They're about to enter a classroom with their classmates today. When they entered, they saw something that shocked them greatly. They saw a troll. In their world, trolls are notorious for being fierce and cruel monsters. But this troll is clean and well-dressed. The troll let them into the classroom. She is their teacher for that class. Her name is Garcia Kim, she's a half-troll. She said they seem scared of her, but they shouldn't be nervous. Because she doesn't eat people. Then she licked her lips. Unless when she's really, really hungry. The students' reactions to what Ms. Garcia Kim said were indescribable. The teacher said, maybe I shouldn't have made that kind of joke. Anyway, class has started. Most of the magic they will learn, they won't be able to use immediately until they become adults. The purpose of their class is for the students to find out what kind of magic suits them. There are risks and dangers in the life of a mage, so she's here to guide them. The three of them felt relieved, thankful that not all teachers in the academy are like the Lich. What is magic? Asked the teacher. Ardenhart replied, A mage is someone who changes the world by their will. Correct, said Teacher Kim. She added that this is the process of borrowing magic and mana power from ancient beings of power capable of changing the world. A mage should be aware of the magic around them, know how to gather its power, and combine energies to produce results. Sometimes magic needs incantations, or choreography, or sometimes agents are required. But the most important thing is willpower. Now it's time for the practical demo. It's our protagonist's first time trying to use a wand and perform magic. What's this? His wand lit up immediately? The teacher instructed, the first step is to imagine a light and maintain it. Yoner seems to be doing it, but she thinks it's challenging. She needs to hyperfocus, or she'll make a mistake, just like how hard it is to ride a wild horse that's hard to control. Step 2, the teacher said, is to shout the incantation, "Oh light." Ms. Kim demonstrated this and produced a very bright magic. A shorter incantation is better, she taught. So you don't get easily distracted. Lee seems to be getting the hang of it. So he tried it, and produced a big spark, hurting himself. The same thing happened to Ardenhart and Yoner. As for Gainando, the magic he produced went wild on its own. But Ms. Kim calmed it down and turned it into angel wings. That's what happens to magic when it's not controlled properly. They lack control, so they just need to practice and practice. As long as they have some mana left, just keep on practicing. It's a teacher's job to watch over them to ensure no one gets hurt. After a while, some of our classmates gave up. In Ms. Kim's mind, illuminate magic is the most basic of all, but for first-timers, it usually takes a month to learn it properly. But her students don't know that. Ms. Kim kept making them repeat, but as time went on, more and more students gave up. Until only Lee was left standing. Ms. Kim wondered how this student managed to try for the 7th time, when usually a new student with a lot of magic power only lasts up to 5 tries. Magic power, some of their Eastern tribes call it energy. The cool scholars call it ether. The priests call it divine power. It has many nicknames, and since it's a consumable resource inside every mage, new mages who don't know how to conserve mana power often run out of it quickly. Ms. Garcia Kim was very impressed with our protagonist. Moreover, when she asked for his name, he said Lee Han and not his Wardina's family name, meaning our protagonist is pro-equality. He quickly became Ms. Kim's favorite. "Let me see your hands," said Ms. Kim. When she held Lee's hand, she felt like she was transported to a vision of a lot of water rushing over her. It felt like she was underwater. "Is there a problem?" Lee asked, waking Ms. Kim from her trance. "Oh, nothing. Resume class," said Ms. Kim. Gainando whispered to Yoner, "We should save Lee, a troll might eat him."
Are you stupid?
Ms. Kim told Lee to see her after school. The teacher told the students that it's normal at first to run out of magic power quickly, but as long as they practice, their capacity will grow, and they will also become more efficient in using mana. Gainando got a special mention. The teacher said, "You shouldn't over-practice or you might get injured." And she reassured Gainando that she doesn't really eat students. After class, Lee went to see Ms. Garcia Kim. "Did I do something wrong?" Lee asked. Ms. Kim said, "Actually, our headmaster mentioned you." Lee was surprised, wondering what the lich said about him. "Don't worry," said Ms. Kim. "It seems that their headmaster is just crazy, but deep inside he's kind. The students don't know this, but their headmaster has a keen eye for people. And he tells his professors about the things he sees in the students. It's also for everyone's safety, like this beastman. He warned them that he seems stubborn and is a risk to others. And this student with mixed demon blood, so they should be careful teaching holy magic when he's in class. But this is what he said about Lee Han. He has a lot of potential for great stupidity." Ms. Kim thought, there's a saying in the East that stupidity is also equivalent to wisdom. So what does the headmaster mean? Ms. Kim has high expectations for Lee Han. Why did you call me here?" Lee asked. Ms. Kim said, "I called you here because you have a lot of mana." Lee scratched his head, thinking that was it. Why did Ms. Kim call me just to tell me that? After all, it grows during training. Ms. Kim continued, "And it's not just a lot of mana. You have so much mana to the point that I can't even determine the limit of your magic capacity." Lee was taken aback by what he heard. The amount of mana a person has is also considered a talent for a mage. If you have little mana, you have to go through many difficult processes to increase it. But if you're rich in mana, you can be a bit carefree in using it. Lee was delighted to learn this. He thought, well then, that means he'll have an easy life. But Ms. Kim said, "You're so unlucky, Lee." "Huh? What do you mean, Ms. Kim? Isn't it good news that I have so much mana?" Ms. Kim said, "Usually yes, more mana is better, but yours is just too much. For example, it's easy to control the water in my glass. But, do you think it's easy to control the entire ocean?" Lee realized Ms. Kim was right. Because control is the most important thing to learn, especially at the beginning. And now, he knows he's going to have a hard time learning it. Ms. Kim put a bracelet on him. It's a bracelet that absorbs mana, and for now, it will help him. "Thank you, Professor," said Lee. Ms. Kim said, "I wouldn't call you if it was just that simple, right?" It seems like Ms. Kim can read minds, haha. Ms. Kim advised Lee that she thinks it's better if Lee uses many different magic skills so he can consume more mana. He can practice alone if he wants, since it's impossible for him to run out. Lee thought, I wasn't looking for special treatment. it looks like I'm going to have a hard time in this situation. I just need to make sure my grades are high. Lee asked Yoner what classes they wanted to take. I definitely want to do alchemy, said Yoner. Come on. Why don't you join me? Gainando chimed in, asking Yoner why alchemy? He said that's for servants. Yoner said, Lee, step aside for a moment. Uh-oh, Yoner is furious with Gainando.
You better not ask me for potions,
Yoner shouted. Since Lee has experience in melee combat, Yoner's punch was very good. Are you okay with what you did, Yoner? It's fine, I'll just apologize to him tomorrow. They ran into students from the Black Turtle dorm in the hallway. They don't really pay attention to them, but it's just awkward how they look at them. There are usually only two reactions commoners have when meeting nobles. Either they're scared, or they don't want to approach them. Sometimes, they express their anger. Lee wanted to be friendly with them, but he thought it might backfire. Their professor arrived. Is everyone here? He said. So in their school, they have a lich, check. A half-troll, check. And now, a professor who's a dwarf. I am your Golem Geomdar, call me Professor your Golem. I know what you're thinking, the school building is so beautiful. So, why are we out here? Ardenhart replied, so we can learn to feel the mana in nature. The professor was silent. Do you know the right answer, Lee-han? I'm not sure. Lee replied, because here we can gather a lot of materials. That's right, said Professor your Golem. Our protagonist was delighted because he was right. Good thing you know how to use your brain, said the dwarf. Ardenhart is jealous, she's upset. Lee thought, I didn't even use my brain there, it was just common sense and it turned out to be right. Oh, I don't want to have a classmate rival. The professor spoke, listen, we're all here so I can teach you the things you need for alchemy. I know you're thinking that the two most important things are talent and control. But what's really important here is gathering materials. Ardenhart countered, Professor, it's easy to buy or grow our own materials. It's hard to think that this is the #1 skill of alchemists. Some of her classmates who heard her agreed. And here's Professor your Golem's reaction. You're an ironhead who knows nothing about the practical side of being a mage. Don't you know that only 10% of all types of materials can be grown? And not all materials available in the market are good to use. There are many adventurers who sell materials they just randomly pick from anywhere. To be a truly successful alchemist, you need to learn how to gather your own materials. Humph! Enough explaining, it's time for the practical test. Each of you, find this material. Lee and Yoner recognized it as the Doko herb. Einrogard is known as a school where there have been cases of students dying. Because magic is naturally dangerous and accidents are unavoidable. And their professor is just letting them scatter in this forest. Lee and Yoner said it's unsafe if it's just the two of them. They should at least be a group of 3, maybe there's a classmate they can invite. Why don't we ask the princess? Lee suggested. Ugh! She's so fussy, how can she help us? Yoner responded. It should be easy to find herbs, Lee said. However, it seems Ardenhart and their other classmates already have teams. Wait, what's this? They do have classmates from the Black Turtle dorm. But why does it seem like they're avoiding me? Lee thought to himself. Lee didn't know, but the princess is famous and is like a celebrity. She's known for being kind, smart, and skilled. So even though she's also a noble, she's everyone's favorite, regardless of their status. In contrast to a prince whom no one knows. All the students with teams have left, and only a few Black Turtle students remain. But Lee saw someone who seemed compatible with him and Yoner. This is Nilia, a dark elf from the Shadow Patrol located in the north part of the Empire. The group from the Shadow Patrol are skilled hunters and scouts. Nilia said the task seems easy, even though she's just heard of the Doko herb. Because the forests and mountains are like a playground for the Shadow Patrol. Ahem, Lee and Yoner approached Nilia. They wanted to team up. In Nilia's mind, oh, a noble woman, and who's this other one? What do you want from me? Do you want to team up with us? Yoner asked. What are you planning? Huh? Nilia responded. It seems Nilia has a grudge against nobles. She's only had bad experiences with them in the past. They always looked down on them and called them monkeys. And no matter how much respect and service they gave to the nobles, they were never satisfied. Lee said it's dangerous to go into the forest alone without backup. Humph, I don't need you, Nilia replied. In her mind, she thought they might just want to use her as bait. Lee said, why would we? We don't plan to be baiters. Nilia still refused, but Lee persisted. Lee said, it's risky, you never know if while you're searching, a monster might suddenly be behind you. There's probably no fool thinking they can do everything alone, right? It seems Nilia is getting irritated, so she finally agreed. I knew you were smart, Lee said to Nilia. Yoner was so embarrassed for him. We can see that Nilia is very agile in the forest, jumping and clinging to tree branches. Yoner was impressed.
Amazing? How did you know she's this good, Lee-han?
Lee said he could tell from the muscles in Nilia's legs and the calluses on her hands that she's good with a bow. Only skilled hunters have those, Lee said. Nilia noticed something different about Lee. It's almost like he can read minds with how observant he is. Then Lee suddenly said, just kidding, I just saw the Shadow Patrol symbol on her waist. Oh, Nilia was listening to us.
No.
Slow down, Nilia. Match our pace.
I don't want to.
Lee said, Yoner is the only one among us who knows about the Doko herb. If she faints from your speed, what will you do? Nilia had no answer. She just said, well, you're useless. I'm your guide in the forest, Yoner knows about the herb, and you're just an extra. Technically, Nilia was right and Lee knew he was just an extra, but he just said, I'm here to protect both of you. Nilia said, true, you do look like a knight based on your physique, but why are you from the Blue Tower? Lee clarified that he's not a knight, but he's from the Wardina's family. Nilia was shocked by what she learned. What could it be? What's wrong with the Wardinas? She seemed very anxious. Lee asked Yoner, what's wrong with our family? Rumors are normal among noble families, but the rumors about the Wardinas are really intense. And here are the rumors about the Wardinas. First, their patriarch is said to be a dragon, and he once burned a lot of zombies during the Undead Frenzy incident. Second, their family has a contract with ancient spirits in exchange for their emotions, making them very powerful mages. Third, the Wardinas are said to be ruthless, with one of them even destroying an entire city during a riot. Lee thought, those rumors really made them out to be monsters. It's so unfair. Grand mages should be the ones to solve problems during such disasters. Because of this, Nilia started to think that maybe not all the rumors about the Wardinas are true. Because Lee doesn't seem emotionless. They continued their search for the Doko herb. And it seems Nilia found something. Large footprints. And it seems this creature is trying to be stealthy based on the shallow tracks. Nilia was curious about it. Ah, yes, okay, why? Yoner said nervously. Nilia felt embarrassed because she seemed to be the only one interested in such things. But she was surprised because Lee was also enthusiastic about it. Are you really interested in this? Nilia asked. Why not? Lee replied. Nilia blushed. Is that a blush or nervousness? You be the judge. Anyway, just be careful whenever you see something like this. The footprints were large, and they had no idea what monsters were in the area. Since Ein-Rogard has a lot of mana, it also has many monsters. Sometimes there are scary monsters from failed experiments. And sometimes there are scary slimes from discarded potions. That's scary, Lee thought to himself. Nilia said they need to follow the tracks to avoid an ambush. Lee asked her if he could learn to track on his own. Nilia said what he wants is hard, and he'd probably give up quickly. Lee said, maybe you can teach me? I promise I'll do my best. Nilia paused. And said, alright, let's try. Ahem. Moving on. They followed the tracks. And along the way, they finally found the Doko herb they were looking for. But they only found 2, and there were 3 of them, so they still needed to find one more. Yoner said, let's look somewhere else, there's none left here. But why are the two reacting like this? Here it is. They saw the source of the footprints. A giant wild boar. The boar suddenly charged at them. This boar isn't normal because it can detect mana, so it's as dangerous as a monster. The boar suddenly stopped in front of them. Lee said it looks dangerous, so he took out his magic staff. It can change size based on the user's needs and desires. In Nilia's mind, right, he's from the Wardina's family, they're the Grand Mage family of the Empire, so Lee probably already knows a lot of magic before he even entered this school. Nilia told Lee, if you're not sure what to do, grab Yoner and run fast, I'll handle the monster. The two were stunned by what Nilia said. She said, I'm the only one who can do what I'm about to do. Lee said, alright, thank you, if I fail, it's up to you. What magic will Lee use? Let's have a flashback, when Lee was just 10 years old. He had already learned a lot about using weapons alongside magic. The sword is the king of all weapons, but even for a swordsman, it's important to learn various skills to control different weapons properly. All these skills are needed for a mage to condense their mana into their weapon. The term for this high level of power is aura. But what Arlalong didn't tell him was that only a few select people can reach this level. But even when Lee was young, he said he didn't need to be that good, he just wanted to be comfortable in an office. He only wanted to learn the sword for self-defense. Arlalong was so proud of Lee because he was such a practical child. So he wanted to teach Lee more and bring him to the aura level. Back to the present, here's Lee. He thrust his magic staff into the boar's mouth. The two were shocked by what he did. The boar was stopped, and it just fell down. The two couldn't believe that Lee did that without using any magic. They didn't know that our protagonist had developed a skill where he subconsciously uses his mana to fuse it with his weapon. It might not be the peak level power of aura, but it's a good start, and he should thank his survival instinct for it. They checked the boar, and Nilia confirmed it was dead. Yoner felt drained from the experience and was considering dropping the class. Then, there it was again. They heard another boar nearby. When they looked, they saw another boar confronting some of their classmates. Since there were 5 in that group, the 3 of them decided to watch first. One stepped up from the 5, this was Onii-Chan Tagalog. Yoner seemed to recognize him. While the Wardina's family is known for being powerful and serving the Emperor as advisors, the Tagalog family is known for being excellent problem solvers, and their family served the Emperor as the premier in charge of finances. Lee noticed that Onii-Chan also seemed skilled with a sword. Onii-Chan showed confidence, saying he could easily handle the boar and that its moves were predictable. The boar charged at him, and he managed to parry and strike it. However, it seemed the boar only got angrier from the hit and it back-kicked him. His groupmates became worried. But then, Ardenhart stepped up. What powers will our princess use? The 3 continued to watch, just as curious as we are about what the princess will do. Ardenhart focused intently, observing every tiny detail of the boar's movement, including its breathing. And here she goes, our princess is making her move. Then, bang! Fire struck the boar from behind. It immediately fell, and it turned out Li Han was responsible, and he even thanked Nilia for the attack tips. Oh well, anticlimactic. I wanted to see what Ardenhart would do. But it seems good that Lee saved her from danger. Because it looked like the princess wasn't really sure about her plan against the boar. So she thanked Li Han profusely. She now owes him a favor. Perfect. Lee said. He has a favor to ask. What favor do you need? The princess asked. Lee replied, don't you have many connections? Can you help me get into classes where it's easy to get high grades? Ardenhart was surprised by Lee's request. She couldn't believe that a Wardina's was looking for easy classes and didn't want a challenge. She thought Li Han might be joking. Then another voice answered, I know what the easy classes here are, you should ask me. Lee thought the voice sounded ominous. And the intimidating aura felt familiar, like during his college days when his professors would ask him for favors. Li Han, the easiest class in Einrogard is the alchemy class. Eeg? It was Professor Yergalem. Lee tried to stay calm. He wasn't the inexperienced person he used to be. He impressed the professor by saying he was looking for passion and love in the class he wanted. The professor seemed pleased with his answer. And it was clear that he became the professor's favorite student, which made Arden hard and others jealous and envious. "Humph, this concludes our class for today," said the professor. Not all students had the opportunity to encounter boars. Onii-Chan Tagalog asked if the professor had planned it. He replied, "Do you think I just wanted you to look for herbs earlier? The real lesson today is that you should learn that many things can happen around you whenever you're gathering materials. And it's important to save yourselves from various dangers, whether you fight well or just run fast away from danger. Do you understand? Damn it.
Yua, don't you need the doko herbs we picked?
A nervous Yoner asked.
We worked really hard to find them.
Huh? You found some of that? The professor replied. You pass. I can see the three of you are a perfect fit for my class. Especially you, Li Han. Ha ha ha. All Li Han could do was nod. He swallowed his nervousness and replied to the professor with a smile. Alchemy is my dream, sir. I'll do my best. Professor Yergalam pondered, thinking that young people at this age should be stubborn and rebellious, but Li Han seemed to think maturely. The professor said that since Li Han managed to kill the boar and find the doko herb, he would grant him special privilege to access and use his cabin in the forest anytime he wanted. Li was worried, thinking he might be tasked with cleaning the cabin. The professor clarified, ahem. What I mean is this. What do new students in the academy want the most? Isn't it food? You might not be excited now, but you'll soon realize its value. It's hard to survive on the food they give you here, especially since you're all nobles. But inside my cabin, it's full of various fresh ingredients, including spices and vegetables that I personally picked from the forest. Li realized it was like having unlimited access to a buffet. Alchemy is the best, Li exclaimed. Professor Yergalam was delighted with him. The students talked among themselves, some saying their professor was crazy for releasing a boar, they almost died, and they didn't want to return to his class. Li thought he wouldn't enjoy the alchemy class, but now that he has access to a cabin, a river, and fresh pork, it's time to prepare a lot of packed food. Now he has a new problem. He knows how to butcher a pig, but he's not sure if he can do it alone without Arlalong. A very nervous Yoner said she would help Li Han, in exchange for some pieces of pork. Nilia asked them, can you nobles really butcher a pig? Giga Chad Li replied, Nilia, do you also want to eat pork? So, Nilia helped them. Of course, we know she's an expert hunter from the Shadow Patrol. Yoner, on the other hand, comes from a family of material experts. So it seems they have a good partnership for the task at hand. The professor provided them with the tools they needed, and they began the butchering. Nilia was impressed with our two nobles. She didn't expect there were nobles who knew how to do this kind of work. They even knew not to throw away the intestines because they could be used to make sausages. Li Han's goal was to be able to preserve food for a long time, as he wasn't sure what kind of hardships they might face in the next few weeks. He also knew how to smoke meat. The professor was impressed. It was only their third day at the academy, and Li had already achieved so much. Very good, very good. Ahem. Are you also hungry, sir? Li asked. A bit, the professor replied. They continued preparing the food. And Professor Yergalam even gifted them bread, butter, and jam. It's delicious. They really enjoyed their meal. They enjoyed a peaceful picnic and a great meal together. Afterward, they had a problem with the excess food they had. They were full, and they had preserved a lot of food for later. Nilia suggested, why not share the excess food with the people from the Black Turtle Tower? The two looked at each other. Yes. That's a great idea. Let's sell it to them. Nilia was stunned by their response. Why were these two nobles so weird? They should be very wealthy, but even food that could be given away, they thought of selling. Nilia didn't know that, first of all, Li really wanted to save a lot of money for his safe future. Yoner also wanted to save money to invest in his planned workshop. She asked them if they really planned to sell it. Of course, the two said, even inviting Nilia to join them in selling. Nilia said she would just give her share to her friends. The two told her that friends aren't a good investment as they might disappear in the future. Our professor, who was watching them, said these three students of his were very passionate. He looked forward to their future, but it seemed he needed to prepare for the many headaches they would bring into his life. Here is the vainglorious Blue Dragon's Tower, where the nobles and elites are dormed. It stands in the forest, far from the main school building, so the air is always fresh, and the students feel refreshed every morning. But this morning, the students smell something unusual. Yoner and Lee are searing steaks. It seems the noble students are dying of envy. But the two said they cooked for everyone. They were overjoyed to hear this. However, there's a catch. It costs 2 silver coins per person, Lee said. The classmates were thoroughly enjoying it, some even tearing up. They said it's been a long time since they had a good meal since they started school. They even cheered for the names Wardinas and Macon out of sheer joy. Lee said their business was successful, they sold even though they charged them 3x the usual price. The two had a mischievous grin, it seemed they could continue this business daily since there's no other source of meat for the freshmen. And here comes Gainando back into the scene. He woke up extremely hungry and looking emaciated. Gainando was shocked to see the prepared steaks. Lee offered him some, and he was very excited to eat. But Lee stopped him. Payment first, he said. Even just 1 silver coin would do. Our friend even got a 50% discount. However, Gainando didn't have any money on him. Lee said that's okay, there's another way to pay. Through credit, he just needs to sign. Gainando was speechless and struggled to sign due to trembling. He said Lee was very kind to him. He's happy to have a true friend like him. And our dynamic duo seemed pleased with their success this morning. Now, class time began, and our classmates entered. Magic Basics was their first class again this morning, and some of our nobles were complaining. They said they, as nobles, are too skilled to still study Magic Basics. Lee couldn't believe they were serious about their claims. And here it is again. The strong green aura of our headmaster arrived. He's also their personality education professor. He said, "Look at these fools. It seems you had a good meal today. Imagine, it took you a month to get your own food?" A student complained, asking why he's so strict. But before he could continue, a green magic choked him. The headmaster said he's glad they finally understood how to get their own food. Every year, the freshman nobles are always the last and slowest to learn among all first years. Black turtles always come first, followed by white tigers. Phoenixes are third, and blue dragon nobles are always last. After all, they're not used to facing hardships. The headmaster was impressed because they progressed faster this year compared to usual. Although, he knew it happened because of one person. Lee made eye contact with the headmaster, so he quickly looked away. Lee is indeed unique, and the headmaster was right. Wardinas are known to be stubborn mages, but Lee Han is a flexible person. Being flexible is a very important trait for a mage. That's why he always gives the academy students problems and hardships. A curious student asked again about the purpose of their class. The professor threw the question back at him, but he didn't know the answer. The headmaster said it's because of him that the emperor blames the mistakes and wrongdoings of the empire's mages who graduated from Einrogard. He's been blamed by the emperor many times, so he created this class. So when Einrogard graduates make another mistake, he won't be blamed because he taught them all good manners. Do you understand? The professor shouted. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The curious student replied. The professor said, first of all mages are unpredictable, and they're all the same. None of them are unique, so they shouldn't act like they are. The headmaster made the students read aloud page 1 of the textbook. I will never use magic to harm others. Louder. I will never use magic to harm others. One more time. As the headmaster repeatedly made them recite this, our protagonist doubted the effectiveness of their professor's teaching style. The Lich hoped that the students understood what he taught in class. And he hoped they would develop good hearts. But before they could be dismissed, he needed 2 volunteers. The students avoided eye contact, naturally, just like we do in class when our teacher is looking for someone to assign a task. Lee thought to himself that it would be risky for everyone if no one volunteered. And just as he thought that, the Lich said the same. If no one stepped up, they would all be punished. So, our protagonist volunteered. He thought that there might be some benefits for those who volunteered. "Ooh," said the Lich. "All right, Mr. Show-Off." Lee was taken aback by this, but he swallowed his fear and said, "It's an honor for me to help a teacher I deeply respect." Lee even mentioned this with a smile. The Lich thought to himself that he really didn't like hearing flattery. But Lee was alright because being a proactive student is also important. And Lee felt that the Lich probably knew the truth. Then Gainando spoke up. "Are you crazy, Lee-han? You don't know what the Lich might do to you." Another classmate tried to calm Gainando down. "Relax, bro. Wardinas aren't crazy, and he knows what he's doing. He sacrificed himself for all of us." Gainando was inspired by what he learned and realized he felt a sense of heroism. He wanted to emulate Lee and overcome his fear to volunteer. He wanted to stand up and shout, but his knees were still weak. But someone volunteered before him. Onii-Chan Tagalog. The professor seemed pleased when a member of the Tagalog family volunteered, because they were good with documents. Onii-Chan arrogantly agreed. Lee remembered Onii-Chan. He was the one kicked by a wild boar during their alchemy class. And it seemed he also studied swordsmanship. Lee wondered if they had the same goals in school. Onii-Chan's glasses sparkled as he held them, and he told Lee that he was doing this as a thank you for Lee's help last time. Lee said he didn't need to do that. Onii-Chan replied that the Tagalog family's calculations are always clear. Suddenly, the Lich professor appeared between them and said, "I'm glad my two volunteers are on good terms, but we have something to do right now. I want you to copy all the student safety rules and finish them all before the next class." Clearly, Lee and Onii-Chan regretted their decision. That afternoon, before dusk, Asher was furiously writing, while cursing their professor. He wondered why they had to write so much when the professor could easily make multiple copies using magic. Lee, who was writing beside him, was worried. Asher looked like he might pass out from anger. Lee thought he knew why the professor gave them this task. The Lich was waiting for them to use magic when they couldn't bear it anymore. But they weren't even close to controlling simple magic like Illuminate. So it was even more impossible for them to magically copy. But if the professor had even a bit of conscience, he should have given them a hint or clue about what to do. Onii-Chan noticed Lee was deep in thought and asked if he was planning something. Lee said he was just looking for clues or things in their classroom that the professor might have left to make the task easier. "Is that okay? Won't we get into more trouble?" Onii-Chan asked. Lee replied that no one said it was forbidden, and they were inside the headmaster's lecture hall. Onii-Chan pondered Lee's words. "Great. I guess it's okay to steal or cheat sometimes," he said. The two searched the classroom for anything that might help them. But they found nothing at first. Until Lee found a mysterious drawer. It seemed to have green magic from the Lich. He called Onii-Chan to check it out. They prepared themselves and asked each other if they were sure about what they were doing. When they opened it, a Lich appeared. Lee noticed it was just an illusion magic projection the professor had placed. It spoke to them, saying it was good they decided not to continue the pointless task of writing by hand, pen, and paper. The sooner they stopped and found this clue, the better. Only fools would continue writing by hand. The two were irritated by its insult. The image projection said that inside the drawer was a tutorial on first circle magic basic control. They needed to learn it as fast as possible. And poof, the speaking image disappeared. Onii-Chan was trembling with anger. Why was their professor so cruel? They were always being toyed with. What kind of teaching was that? It was abusive. Onii-Chan said to Lee, "Come on, Lee, join me. Let's both file a complaint and report the headmaster to the higher-ups." But before Onii-Chan could finish, he realized Lee wasn't listening to him and had already started studying. "Traitor," he said to Lee. Lee told him they just had to accept their headmaster's teaching style because, even though the Lich was crazy, he was powerful and well-connected. They couldn't oppose him. Onii-Chan thought about it. He was the law of Einrogard, and they couldn't do anything. So they began studying basic control. The three most important things in basic control were will, incantation, and movements. For this spell, their incantation was move or control. The two struggled with practice, unable to even move a feather. Onii-Chan ran out of mana, so Lee let him rest. Lee said that magic and mana control were really difficult, especially since each mana movement was different and depended on its use. It was like balancing many things, like those in the circus who ride unicycles while balancing objects on sticks. But Lee was determined and tried to focus. He thought deeply, telling himself he should think of this as his last chance. He remembered his state of mind when he was super productive and fast during cramming sessions. Last-minute homework and papers with looming deadlines, those college feels. His mind was light and clear. He focused well and tried to gather mana again. When he said, "Move," the feather trembled, and he managed to make it float. And that's where our video ends. What do you think? Will the magic of moving the feather really help them? Did you also relate to cramming sessions as a student? Let us know in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe to be notified of upcoming videos. See you next time, Onii-Chan.